Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. My name is Steve Hall and I'm naked right now. And over there is Pascal Floor. Now you're all envisioning that.
Oh, now I didn't shut off my fan that is still running and makes some noise here. So yeah, I'm not naked because I had my fan running and on me. And probably in a couple of seconds, I'm going to regret not being naked. And I could easily do that as well. Same as you. I could sit here, not topless, but bottomless.
Bottomless, yeah. Like
can you even say that?
Okay, it doesn't quite make sense.
No.
Yeah, I don't know why I have actually got bottoms on, but I should just be free.
Yeah. But I don't. How is it possible that we are always in the last Improvement Season podcast starting with talking about sexual stuff? Is it because we are both like deep in the off season and the libido is actually pretty high?
I blame you 100%.
The thing is, though, we are talking about adolescents' balls and penises. So when the libido is high and we are thinking about that, I don't think it's a really good idea. So
I'm normally
can get
a
us
prude.
into trouble.
I'm normally a typical British prude. Don't really swear. Don't really talk about these.
I bring out the worst in you.
What is the temperature over in Germany today?
I think today it's 35 degrees.
35, okay.
Yeah. So when I went out, it's just like awful. Oh. There's just that wall you're walking against. So the best thing is to either, that would be so amazing to own a house and have a basement, like a super large basement, where you then in the summertime move down into the basement, have your sleeping room there, and in the wintertime, move up again. That would be amazing.
I did say...
And I'm living in a small apartment, so...
I said to Charlotte, I want to get a bed for, like, outside, just on the balcony, so we can sleep out there. That would be nice.
But, I mean, in the middle of the night, it's still super warm.
Yeah, it's true.
It's still, like, 25 degrees or so. So, yeah.
Apparently, this might be the hottest, like, UK recorded weather, like, reading ever.
Yeah.
Which is
like, a couple
crazy.
of weeks ago, I think, when we also did an Improvement Season podcast... there were record level temperatures in Germany as well, up to 40 degrees, like, which is crazy.
40. Yeah, that's what we're close to today. And I'm just like...
And there was that one day here in Berlin where it was 38 degrees. So 40 degrees was not located in Berlin, but a little bit more south. But 38 degrees was already so exhaustive. And I wasn't out. Because it was just so crazy. I went to my bike just to check something there, and that was already enough outside, so...
I'm actually standing here, and I wish I got a towel, because I can feel my forehead, like, starting to drip.
And I'm sitting. Just imagine how it is down there.
Oh, no.
But to be honest, I'm sitting on a towel. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Damn, we just can't deal with the heat. We are both, like... Well, I suppose no, you're not peak mass.
No, I'm not the fattest I've ever been.
Well, I'm definitely the fattest I've ever been. Still trying to catch that 200 pounds, which is just fucking haunting me.
Yeah, it's not possible to get there.
It doesn't seem
like it.
I got
like
close
Groundhog
this morning.
Day for you. Yeah. Each and every morning you get up and be like, huh, what is going on? Same day again, same scale weight since like 3-4 weeks or so.
It's been about... I'd say it's good. Like I hit 199 this morning, and that's like a non-edema 199. Whereas before I had a bit, I knew I was holding on to some edema. Oh. So I think it's getting there. But to be honest, like it's just a number. But I just, if I don't hit it, I'm just like, fuck's sake. It's just so annoying.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you said, it's just a number. Yeah. It's not that you have to chase a scale weight. You have to chase a specific look. Right, and progress in it for itself.
Yeah,
and not just like at all costs reach a certain scale weight, because what if you're just fat, right? I mean,
and when it's this,
was it really beneficial to get pushed there?
No, not at all. But it's definitely appropriate for me in terms of like how much weight I've been gaining, and it's in my sights. It's just, will it happen? I said yesterday on my story, I've stopped doing, I was doing like warm-up cardio, but it's fucking boiling anyway, and I cut that out, and I've just increased calories by like 100, so I'm on just over 4,000 now, and it's just like, like an old record, it's just a chore, but it's only like 1 week left now until they start coming down.
It's just so funny enough. I think it was yesterday on Abel's Facebook groups. So the self-development, self-sustainable. What is it again? SSD. Sustainable Self-Development Facebook group. They've talked about Broderick Chavez, our podcast, the way it was on, talking about high carb mastering and stuff like that. And then there was someone like saying, how is it possible or beneficial for a natural guy eating 3,000 plus calories on a day-to-day basis? And that means he would then need to eat over 400 grams of carbohydrates. How is that even possible? And there were just people like commenting like, how is that not possible? Like, for me, with over 3,000 calories, it is not a problem to get over 400 grams of carbs just because of the way I eat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I have a problem with getting my fats in. And someone like you then who pushes up to 4,000 calories is like 500-600 grams of carbohydrates easily.
Yeah.
Natural. So, yeah.
And you think of, I don't know, you can just think of people who aren't, well, I suppose it's that he was saying specific to bodybuilders, I guess, but like there's endurance athletes who just are on, they just eat all the junk, ridiculous amounts.
Yeah. Like bodybuilders. So people, most of the time, because bodybuilders track their macros more specifically, they have their numbers in check. And also everyone looks then at the bodybuilders and think that these are high carbohydrate intakes on a day-to-day basis. But that is just a joke in comparison to marathon runners or to someone who is doing ultra marathon or, I don't know, Ironman training and stuff like that, where they are on a day-to-day basis, like doing tremendous amounts of work, right? Where they have like a carbohydrate intake of 700-800. I don't even know, right? I don't even know what these guys right now, the Tour de France is happening, right? Like on a day-to-day basis, they are burning like over 6,000 to 10,000 calories. Like, and they are sitting on a bike, so they can't just eat vegetables and their rice with a little bit of fish and stuff like that. They just choke on like glucose, small snacks, small sugary snacks the entire time. Drink like sugary drinks, stuff like that.
I think I recently heard Scott Stevenson talking about how he worked himself up to a 2,000 calorie intra-workout shake because he was on 6,000 calories. So to get it in, he was like, I just have to take this to the gym. So,
and it's absolutely all right. So I have a client right now who has a real big issue in just eating enough. And I think that his food choices are just too clean.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? Because most of the time, that's not the issue with many people. The other way around is actually the case. So for him, I basically said, once you meet your mineral and vitamin intake for the day, right? And once at the end of the day, you're still in your macro ranges, it's absolutely all right to fill out the rest with more palatable foods and more quote unquote junk food. Because at some point, it's probably impossible to eat it just clean. Yeah. Unless you were just like I don't know, Jay Cutler, and the only thing that you need to do on a day-to-day basis is eat, train, sleep. But even then, it's becoming a chore. I once saw a documentary about Rich Froning. So for those who don't know, Rich Froning won the CrossFit Games a couple of times back in the days. He was kind of the guy back in the day when it comes to CrossFit. And there was a documentary about him when he was just training. He was training 5 times per day. 5 times. Jeez. Like different skills, different kind of focuses and stuff, right? At the beginning of the day, more strength oriented, then a little bit more endurance, then skill work, etc., right? But he was at a caloric intake of like, I think it was also 6,000 to 7,000 for a guy his size. That he was weighing, I think, 80 kilograms or so. All right. For a guy his size, eating that amount of food, right, and meeting his minimum mineral and vitamin intake for the day, you will get that quite easily, right? And then he just said like, okay, I'm eating Oreos here, drinking a little bit of Coke here, right? Because that's what he had to do to still then be able to perform. Because if he only had to eat clean, he couldn't train 5 times per day because that would still sit in his stomach and he would just throw up the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference. I think I don't normally have much sympathy for people who say they can't eat enough to gain weight, because normally they're not doing what I am doing and like splitting up their feedings through the day. They're not eating like easily palatable foods. They are doing like, they're trying to eat clean, and maybe they eat like 2 big meals and then like a few snacks. It's like they're not really helping themselves out. Whereas like I'm actually at the point at which like I don't want to eat the rest of my cereal in my bowl because I feel sick. Like it's like actually is like a feeling of sickness. I come around for a mealtime and I'm like, I am not hungry. I feel like I'm putting food on top of food. Like it's just, it doesn't feel pleasant, especially in this heat. It just makes everything worse. Ice cream is even shit. I'm just like, I bought actually, because you'd been talking about it the last few times we'd spoken on here, the Ben & Jerry's lower calorie ice cream, because it's lower fat. So it's kind of a bit more appropriate. And just even eating like, I couldn't eat a whole tub of that. I just like feel like I was going to vomit. So I have like half a tub and I'm like, yeah, it's like fine. It melts in my mouth. It's just, it's so sad that food's so unpleasurable at the moment.
I think you got a point there, right? Because gaining weight is actually not a big deal. And it shouldn't be, because we are living in a society where the food availability is there 24/7 and the palatability is as crazy as it has never been before. So it shouldn't really be a challenge to actually eat or get in those calories. It shouldn't, right? It's just about, yes, if you're not really educated enough, then I can see why that may be a struggle for you, because you're under the belief that those calories need to come from only quote-unquote healthy sources, which is, of course, then becoming a struggle. Because if you have a portion of vegetables in each and every single meal, oh shit, yes, it's getting hard to actually eat that, because it's definitely not palatable, especially if you're already struggling. Eating then the vegetables, then you're becoming like that small child, 5 years of age, who doesn't want to eat the vegetables. But then someone else is forcing you to do that, right? Or you're basically forcing yourself to eat those vegetables still, because you have to get those calories in, which is from those vegetables like 40, 100 calories. Don't know. Of course, it's then becoming hard just to the sheer amount of food that you are eating, right? But this is then where you just have to be a little bit creative, such as you have to get creative when you are in a caloric deficit, right? The other way around holds true as well. But because of those physiological responses that are preventing us from starvation, it should be so much harder to actually be in a caloric deficit than it is to be in a surplus. So when someone is then saying like, okay, I'm struggling gaining weight, sorry, but this is then because of either being a little bit uneducated or being under a false fallacy, or just you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And that is, for example, you're force feeding yourself. And if you really want to get to the next level, sometimes that is what is required. If you don't, if you're totally cool with making some progress, but not the most optimal amount, that is totally all right, right? So we are not forcing anyone to do the most optimal thing or what we deem as most efficient. But I always like to know, or I always like my clients at least, to know what I deem most optimal, and then I want them to decide for themselves. This is the same when it comes to, like, I don't know, training frequency, training split for them specifically, where I would say like, okay, for you, I would then say like 5 days per week with this amount of volume is probably the best thing that you can do, based on the data and the feedback I've got so far. But if you want to pull back to 4 times per week training and can't do as much volume anymore due to time restraints and also just the session MRV and stuff like that, then it's absolutely all right. But I want you to make that decision consciously. And that's the same in every single aspect of your life. You need to be aware of potential consequences, potential downsides, pros, cons that come along with those decisions. And if you're then willing to do those and take those things, totally fine. But never go into a decision blindly.
Yeah, I think it's when people are ignorant to what it takes to get the like most optimum results, and they're like, why aren't I getting that? It's like, well, are you doing everything that person's doing? And I know a lot of the things they're doing are like small, minute things that don't really matter that much. But if they're doing a lot of those things which you're not doing, that adds up to matter. So yeah, I think that's really important. And at the end of the day, just like cutting, especially when you're getting below like your settling point in terms of body fat, that starts to become a huge stressor and becomes really challenging. I think likewise for massing, once you get past like into new body weights you've never been to before, I think the body just really puts up a fight. Like I've never been this heavy before this year. This is the first time I've ever been this heavy. So I think it's just like the body's just like, screw you. We do not need to get any bigger. And actually Charlotte checked, I don't know why, we checked my BMI yesterday. I'm on the verge of obesity. So even actually, I think.
So where are you at the moment? Like 29 or so?
I think I'm like 28 or something. Yeah, 28, 29. But I think even at 165 pounds, which is my stage weight, I think I might still just be overweight or something. Or no, maybe I'm not. That sounds wrong. But I think I'm at the upper end of like healthy weight. And that's like, what? That's me. That's just showing how shit BMI is for people who lift.
But I mean, one thing that is true is just the mortality rate is higher with people who are heavier. And that is true across all species, that when you are a heavier and bigger individual, you're more likely to die earlier. And that is the same there. And thus, I think that BMI is, for once, a good measuring tool. It has so many downsides and flaws to it. But for that, I think it is a really good indicator that when you are on the low end of the spectrum of the BMI, probably the mortality rate, if you're then active and still like doing cardiovascular work and stuff like that, I think that probably this is a good range to be in, at least for if you want to live long.
Yeah, and especially for people who don't lift, like it's very, very good tool for them. So so how's your week gone? You've been deloading this week, right?
No. I thought you did deload. Through. Yeah, no. I've been pushing through, and it was a true challenge. I mean, honestly, I had to motivate myself for each and every single session, but we've talked about it. It is kind of a functional overreaching kind of scenario. I wanted to take the deload, or at least start the prime phase when the child is being born. And that's why I decided to just push through it, because the child isn't there still waiting for it. And yeah, it's probably going to happen like either next week or the week after. So next week is the deload, and then the week after is the prima. So perfect to have pushed through it, but nothing that was sustainable. And I already could feel some aches and pains here and there. And I have something on my back, so the left side of my back, since a long period of time already. Nothing that is keeping me away from training. Nothing that flares up like on a regular basis or is present all the time. It's more like a subtle thing that when I actually load my spine, especially when I have a barbell sitting on my traps, it pushes down on something of my ribs, and then I simply can't hold a barbell or squat, especially like the first initial centimeters of a squat. When I break at my hips, I need to re-rack the bar because it just puts so much pressure on that area. I don't know what it is, and I definitely need to get it checked out at some point. But it came to the point where it I don't know, compressed maybe some nerve, and it pulled all the way over to my chest. And due to my heart situation at the moment, I'm a little bit like, I don't know, anxious about everything when it comes to signals of my heart. And I had like a pressure sensation around my chest, and still have like all the time. And sometimes it was like giving me a stabbing pain, but nothing crazy, nothing like, what was it called again? Pectoralis, no, what is it called? At least when there's a short stabbing pain around the chest area, has a specific term, of course, medical term. We all know that. We've all experienced it at some point due to some air bubbles and stuff like that. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't as harsh or intense. It was just like a subtle pain and it was happening on a frequent basis, and especially in certain positions. And that was like where I then came to realize that it's probably due to that area, because when there's a specific point on my rib cage that when I press it, I can feel it like on my lats, for example. Right. It's crazy. So instead of feeling it on the front of my chest, I can feel it on my lats. So yeah, that flared up quite significantly across this week, and yeah, just overall feeling just tired, irritable. I need to take my naps throughout the day, and that is most of the time the signal and indicator for me that I'm overreaching, especially when I'm taking naps or I feel like needing to take naps. So yeah,
I guess actually I should have known, because when you go quieter on me on WhatsApp, that's probably when you're less, because it happens to me as well. I notice when I'm feeling like really tired, I'm less talkative just in general. So like WhatsApp messages, I'm like, and then also just on like social media on my stories, I'm just like, oh, like
Katie's then always like asking me,
are you okay?
Is everything okay? And you are already in a situation where you're so annoyed by everything that is going on around you, and you're just tired, and that's why you're like having that snappy sound of being like, oh, I'm just tired, right? And everyone who says that, we know that from Hollywood movies, like, okay, he's not just tired. There's something going on, right? And then it's just, oh God, the repeated question every single time, and you're just, I'm just tired. I really just want to sleep.
But it's it's funny because it's, when you actually think about it, it's just stress. Like as you train with higher and higher amounts of volume, intensity for longer periods of time, you accumulate fatigue, you accumulate cortisol, you're in more of a fight state. So you just feel like you just,
but you're overreaching as well at the moment, isn't it?
I feel like I am, but it's next week is my 5th week of this accumulation, which I think I do definitely have it in me. I can beat some performances from this past week, probably eke out a little bit more volume in some areas, but it's going to be really like, it's just every time I get there, I'm like, really? Like I have to do that? Fuck. But that's a good sign, I think, because like if you're not...
The beauty is though that you're training twice daily. I think,
I
don't know, whenever I did that in the past, I don't know, it's just easier to endure workouts because overall, these single sessions aren't as, I don't know, they aren't looking that crazy then. Just when you're looking at the entire day.
I couldn't even imagine having to put any of my sessions into one single workout. Well, apart from my Saturday workout, which is one workout. But that's all like 20, 30 rep range stuff, so it's fairly comfortable. But if I had to put like my legs together, I just like cry. I feel like there's just no way I can do this.
Yeah, and with some sessions, it's just daunting to look at.
Yeah.
And if you're then splitting it up, it just looks, I don't know, so much more appealing.
They take me this week. They're taking like each session's like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Imagine if you had to do 2 an hour, like 3 hours. They'd be taking me over 3 hours potentially, but because I've got them separated, it's much more manageable. They don't always take this long, just so listeners are aware. They can take like half an hour in the first week. But
your gym has aircon in it.
It's fixed. It was broken last week, but thank fuck it was fixed this week.
Mine isn't, and it's just awful. And I'm training early in the morning. I can't even fathom how it must be like midday or even at the evening time when it's also super crowded.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. It's actually
like a sauna.
I was like, I kind of want to like take my laptop and try and work in the gym because it's actually really nice. But I couldn't do that. So yeah, where were we? Yeah. So you're almost deloading, you're feeling shitty, and I'm getting to that point. It's actually, it's going to be really weird. Kind of like, you have like the post-competition blues a little bit. I feel like I'm going to get like the post-mass blues. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not massing for so long now.
I'm really looking forward for the next phase, just also due to the child now coming.
Yeah.
And it's funny because now it's getting more and more predictable. Like, as you know, 3 weeks ago, I think 3 to 4 weeks now ago, Katie was supposed then to actually stay at home, just on the sofa. And we were just like, okay, is it already coming now? That's quite unpredictable and also unexpected. We aren't really prepared that it's coming like 6 weeks earlier. And now we're closer and closer actually getting to the due date. And thus, it's more like, okay, now I'm actually really prepared. And you can prepare because now the closer we're getting to the 10th of August, which is the due date, you can more and more prepare for that because it's more and more likely that the child is now coming like in the next days or like 2 weeks, right? And thus you can prepare yourself and also your environment, and also now for our job and stuff like that, more and more that the clients are very well prepared and set up. And I can already do a little bit of work ahead of time so that I'm not rushing things afterwards. And like 6 weeks earlier, it was just like, shit, it can still happen now. And I have no idea whether it is happening in 5 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now or tomorrow. You were just in the air, and same when was the case for the training and nutrition. And now I'm done with the mesocycle. Now I'm moving over to the prom, and I can relax because that is all kind of now done and checked off, and I can just move forward.
I bet it's going to be really nice. Actually, it's really nice when everything just like works out, when you can plan for everything and it just fits and it suits. So I imagine that is a huge stress relief, and at least you have that. Otherwise, you'd probably be going mental right now.
Do you have it a couple of times now that you're going hypo?
Hypo? No, I haven't gone hypo. I don't know when the last time I went hypo.
Because I told you a couple of weeks ago, right, that sometimes I go out for a walk in the morning time, and even though I had like a bolus of cereals like an hour or 2 hours earlier, I get into that hyper state. And that just happened like last week two times that I went out for a walk, and all of a sudden I just got this sweatiness sensation,
like feeling weak and lightheaded.
Exactly, lightheaded, out of breath super quickly, needed to sit down, definitely needed to have something to eat now, and then it went better like immediately. Which is crazy because I'm not really just super thin, and I'm coming from a past where I was diagnosed with being pre-diabetic, and now I'm just like, my insulin sensitivity and my glycogen levels are always kind of on the low end of things, which I know from also the blood tests I've been doing like over the past years, that I was always at a state then of being too low rather than too high, which is super crazy. But it just goes to show that right now, even carrying a decent amount of body fat, it's not that you are insulin resistance, also that you're probably actually quite can be quite sensitive to that still.
Yes, I can't remember the last time I went hypo. I literally can't remember the last time. I do remember doing it. There were times at which I think it was like post show, and I'd probably fasted quite a while because me and Charlotte were going to go out and eat. And then as you are post show, you're like, let's walk all the way to the restaurant, and it takes like an hour to get there or something. And I remember like going hypo during that walk, and it's
such an awful
it's horrible. Feeling. It's really horrible. You can't concentrate. You feel like you just. It's a horrible feeling.
And I needed to sit down, and I needed something to eat. That was the only thing I knew in that moment. Like, I know that sensation, and I just need something to eat. Like, and Katie was also saying, like, sit down, have something to eat now. And it was only 10 a.m. and I had something to eat like at 7 or so, like 100 grams of cereals, right? So it's not like you don't eat something before that. Yeah, so
weird. That is very weird. Doesn't bode well for when you start cutting.
No. Oh man.
Although the
last times I actually started my cutting phase, it was always in the first week that I went hypo. It's crazy. Like the last 2 cutting phases were like that, where I had like 1 or 2 days where I went hypo because I went out for a walk. Also same scenario. In the morning time, something to eat, went out for my daily early morning walk, and then went hypo. But it was always like transitioning from a maintenance or gaining phase into a cutting phase. So maybe the transition was like what's going on there, but yeah, it's crazy. I don't know.
Should we get to questions? I think that's probably a good little
30 minutes.
Yeah, we are right there. So the first question is from Justin, who has asked, when you're going from MEV to MRV for your arms during a mesocycle, do you count compound movements towards your arm volume? For example, if you want to increase tricep volume from the previous week and you're already adding a bench press set for your chest, should you add a tricep isolation set as well? Or does adding compound sets cover the needed increase in volume for your triceps? Big fan of you guys and thanks for your time. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thanks. So for me, no, I don't count them in because it just overcomplicates things and the tracking. And the thing is, once you feel that you're reaching your MRV, you can still make the adjustments on your triceps or arm volume, right? Because you know, I'm doing too much for the arms and probably it is due to me doing those heavy compound lifts in conjunction with those isolation lifts. So where do you pull back? Of course, not on the compound lifts. You're pulling back on the isolation lifts, which then solves the issue in it for itself. So it's about monitoring your response that you're getting from the training, seeing where the MEV to MRV lies for you, right? And then making the adjustments on the isolation lifts. And for that, you don't need to track the crossover effects from those compound lifts, but you can just go ahead with tracking the overall volume for the arms itself, because that is then giving you enough information to go off by.
So I absolutely agree. This is exactly how I do it as well. And I think it's a self-solving problem, like you said. And if I was only going to add, put an example to it. So if you're doing like bench press and you're a really tricep-y like bencher, then likely if you're kind of auto-regulating your volumes, you're kind of watching your fatigue and your recovery, then you'll not add any more tricep volume because you're a tricep presser. And you probably won't add any more like direct bench work. Maybe you'll add some fly work because that's isolating the chest. So you're working towards that muscle group's volume requirements. So it's a self-solving problem if you follow kind of fatigue, like you follow your fatigue and your recovery for each muscle group there. So yeah, awesome.
Yep.
Next question is from the squad leader, Wes. Patreon supporter. Wes, just as a reminder, give us, this was probably a long time ago, so you probably will do this now. But always just message us over on Patreon if you want to enter a question in, and that goes for any Patreon supporter or any new Patreon supporter. So he said, "Hi guys, I thought of this the other day. Can you implement other lifts into your overreaching week? On normal squats, I can't go heavy due to balance. But on box squats, I can. What if I do squats for the whole meso and then overreaching week, if I have one, I do heavy box squats? I'd like to hear your ideas on this."
So, first and foremost, when you're doing the normal squats, the entire mesocycle, are we saying now, because this is basically what you have been saying in this question, that you're not going heavy? Right? And what rep range are we then talking about when we're talking about heavy, or are we talking about relative intensity in it for itself? Because when you are progressing with squats throughout the entire mesocycle, we are not expecting you to go from something like, let's say 8 repetitions down to 4 repetitions. Unless you are maybe a powerlifter who is in an accumulation block or so, right? But I think that you are interested in physique. So I don't see why then switching over to something like heavy box squats will be a better idea. Also, just from the perspective of neural and technical adaptations. This is something that we bring up like on a frequent basis. The people who change exercises too frequently, they fall under the perception that they are actually making progress when in reality they aren't. Because the relative intensity that you can do on a specific lift is also dictated by your neural adaptations and your technical efficiency. So if you were to change up an exercise that you have been doing for like 2-3 mesocycles, you're quite efficient at that and you are working on your maximum neural and technical efficiency on those. Let's say that's 100%. Now switching over to something that you haven't been doing for like a very long time, You will be progressing in the first initial weeks quite drastically, right? Putting load on the bar each and every single week, which gives you the perception that you are making amazing progress and that you are growing. But in the first initial weeks, it's only neurological adaptations and technically getting more primed and efficient at that movement. Then you have to work up like for a couple of weeks to get to the point where the relative output of intensity and just the relative work that you've been doing before with the former exercise is then on par. So it doesn't make sense to then only for the overreaching week throw in another exercise that is, by the way, partial. But that is something that we don't need to take into account now for my example. But it doesn't make sense to throw an exercise that you're not really primed on, even though that it's quite similar to a normal squat. But then it takes away just the neurological and technical things and makes you not as efficient at that movement. And actually, instead of overloading, you're probably then underperforming.
Yeah, my initial reaction was just like, no. No. So can you implement other lifts in your overreaching week? For sure you can, but Absolutely. It's just not a good idea. Like Pascal said there, you're building momentum with lifts, you're getting some really good adaptations going on, you're now progressing in a really good manner, so you're getting to a point where you can safely overreach with that movement. I think if you introduce a new movement there, you're not getting the benefits that you're hoping for, like Pascal explained. You're also potentially, I think, risking injury because it's now a new movement. Even if it's box squats, I still think that's new enough to cause some potential issues for you.
And by the way, in that same breath, a potential injury risk because you're not technically efficient with that movement and you're extremely pre-fatigued from all the accumulating weeks leading up to that overreaching week in conjunction with the session fatigue already.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't think there's any real benefits to it. The risks are also, risk to reward, like I can't list any real rewards and I can list many risks. So I just don't think it's a wise idea. And then the only thing I think we could probably dig into, and I don't know if we even really can, is you can't go heavy on normal squats. And it's like, do you need to go heavy in an overreaching week or do you just need to go hard? It's kind of like, I don't know what your vision of an overreaching week, but essentially in terms of like volume landmarks, overreaching would be like just overdoing your RMRV. So doing more volume than you can recover from would kind of be an overreaching scenario.
Totally. And that's what I was referring to when I said like, okay, when you're progressing throughout a mesocycle, why can't you do the amount that you've been doing for the entire mesocycle now in the overreaching week due to balance? That would mean, or that would indicate to me that you are actually putting more and more load on the bar and maybe even reducing the rep ranges, which in a hypertrophic stimulus environment doesn't really make too much sense because you're trading one for another and making it so much harder actually for you to recover from the entire session, making it more potentially injurious. And yeah, overall, my idea, not the best way to overreach. One last thing, just to throw in a little bit of devil's advocate. If you really want to introduce a new exercise, right? Don't change it for another exercise, but include one more or so. So let's say you really want to make sure to fully overreach and you want to, I don't know, have a little bit more metabolic disruption in there. So instead of adding a set to a certain lift, such as the squat, you can now implement some walking lunges, which are highly metabolically disruptive. I don't think it's the best way to go about it, but if you really want to add something, then don't exchange it for another exercise, but add it on top maybe.
And maybe even like doing like drop sets or metabolite work with the same movements. Or maybe if you're including a movement, maybe a good one would be like a machine one that you don't need to be as kind of learnt in that movement, if that makes sense. But again, this isn't something I have ever implemented. I don't think you recommend that either, particularly.
No, especially because you can't really track that well. Right? How do you want to really track the progress? If you're then doing it the next time again, because of those neurological and technical adaptations not really taking place because you're only doing it once per mesocycle, will you really get better at that movement? Probably not. And will it then probably more so contribute to being just junk volume? more likely.
Yeah.
I think it would make more sense to rest a little bit longer and do an additional set from something that you are efficient at.
Completely agree. You're just throwing a massive spanner in the wheel, basically, and the likelihood is you're going to fall off that bike.
You know that? Yeah, the meme is so amazing. Sitting exactly on the bike and throwing it yourself and fall.
Cool. So, we have Wes again. So he has asked, I heard on another podcast that sleeping on your back would be so much better than sleeping on your side/belly. Any thoughts on this? And if it's so much better, then how to accomplish this? Because I can't manage to fall asleep on my back. That's all for now. Haha. Thanks in advance, guys. Love the show. Kisses. Well, it's actually a love heart, but
yeah. I don't know. To me, initially, it sounds like a lot of bullshit. But maybe there's even a study supporting that, which doesn't necessarily mean that then it is completely the truth and never can't be anything else anymore. But to me, it sounds like, I don't know, bullshit. If I sleep on my back, I can't fall asleep as well. I'm sleeping on my side. And don't know, maybe it has something to do with the way then you can breathe, maybe. But I heard, and I think that is the case for many people who have more heavy individuals lying on their side or beside them, that the people who are lying on the back, that they are the ones tending to snore a lot. And when you are a little bit of a heavier individual and you're snoring, most of the time this is an indicator that you are not breathing that well and that you're not really getting enough air in. So it could very well be that I don't know how it is when they are lying on the side though. I don't know whether this is actually the same thing, but I know it because my stepdad, he was the biggest snorer in the world. It was crazy. I don't know how my mom actually was capable of sleeping at his side. I heard him like in my room. Yes.
Snorers at the worst.
And he was actually quite obese at that time. I don't know how he is now, but he was weighing 130 kilograms, so really heavily obese. He was snoring massively, right? So I don't know how it is when they are lying on their side, whether this is still the case, but I would assume that probably due to the positioning and it's pressing down on the lungs or so, that maybe there's a compression going on, which then would debunk this theory. But to make a long story short, I have no idea, but it sounds bullshit to me.
I agree. I'm highly skeptical because of saying so much better than sleeping on your side/belly. And I think if that was the case, we've heard it way more often. Someone like Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep, he'd be talking about it in his book.
Yeah.
If it was so much better, we'd just be way more aware of that. And I'm way more inclined to think that it's some hippy dippy bullshit. But again, I don't know. This could be some PhD on a podcast and he really knows his shit. However, I will say I did some research because I was gifted a mattress through Instagram, which was pretty cool. So I did some research into like what would be a good mattress, because this mattress was claiming to be like good for athletes and things like this. So I asked my friend Greg Potter, who has a PhD in sleep, what his like thoughts were on different mattresses, what's ideal. He then referred me to Stuart McGill, and I looked into Stuart McGill's stuff, who is like a back expert. And he was more so along the lines of it just needs to support the natural curvature of your spine. So if you're lighter, then you can get away on like softer mattresses. But if you're heavier, you need a firmer mattress. So most kind of athletes and kind of people like that want to have a firmer mattress that supports their spine. And then you can use like
just
pillows
depends
and
though,
props to like keep your spine a bit more neutral.
Depends though where, because some mattresses have compartments. Right, where in the middle it's a little bit harder. On the show, yeah.
I didn't know
Mine
that.
is like that because Katie and I bought. We got the bed from her parents because our bed was just super shitty and their bed was really, really good, right? So we just needed to buy new mattresses. For the first time in my life, I actually took some money in my hands and bought some proper mattresses because we are spending 1/3 of our lives in that sleeping position, and you better actually spend some money to actually have a healthy sleep, right? That's why I then decided to actually really spend some money and do some research as well. So did that as well. And there are some compartments, right? And for me, because I'm preferring to sleep on the side, I sink in a little bit more because my position is not spread across the mattress as I were when I'm sleeping on my back, for example. So I'm sinking in a little bit more. So the thing is, though, because my area of surface is still a little bit wider than the Gen Pop when they are sleeping on the side, I needed to have somewhat of a softer area on the top as well, so that then my back is aligned, and it needed to be a little bit harder around the hips, so that my back, when my shoulders are sinking into the mattress, when I'm sleeping on my side, that my spine is aligned with my hips. And yeah,
I think that sounds similar to the recommendation he was having. Like, you can kind of sleep in a position where you can use your hand to prop up your hips so they're a bit more neutral, like use a pillow or something. I think I actually sleep with I sleep flat, but with my head to the side, because if I go right on my side, I don't know if that is the sleeping on your side, my one arm will just go dead. I don't know, I can't do it.
That's why. So Katie's always complaining because I have a blanket on my right side and a blanket on my left side and a blanket above me. Because I'm lying on the side. And yeah, it is kind of because I'm just hugging the blanket, because otherwise, while I'm sleeping on my side, my shoulder would always roll forward, but because my titties are in the way and I'm so jacked, it will not fall down to the mattress, and then I'm hanging in that awkward position, and then it's just like the worst position to be in, and then I don't know, I get overly tight in my back, and that's why I need to have something to hug and to lie my arm on, so that I'm just like in that position the entire time, which is really, really cool, but not the best to sleep beside me because I take up a lot of space in bed.
So I think our answer is, we're very skeptical. Sleep in a position that's comfortable to you, to be quite honest. Sleep in a way that's going to promote the best quality sleep for you, and that doesn't put your spine in a weird, funky position.
Yeah.
I think that was actually productive, despite not being actually anything.
Just rambled again. Yeah. Too long. I could have at least made it into 1 minute. I need to go for 5. Sorry for that, guys.
So we have Alexander. He has asked, "Hi guys, if I'm running 5-3-1 with squats and deadlift, how can I implement a mini cut? Should I keep the same scheme progression for now, low reps, or should I change it? Because I like to do early on my routine powerlifting stuff, squat, bench, deadlift, then variants, and finally isolation movements, so I hit all range of reps. I hope you can understand my English. I'm trying to improve on a day-to-day basis." Yeah, English was pretty fine, actually. So 5-3-1, but also with hypertrophic ranges or higher rep ranges for his accessories.
Do you want to go first this time?
How should I implement a mini cut? Should I keep this? Okay. So, yeah. I don't know why I'm struggling with it, really. I think it's because...
I could go ahead if
you've got something in mind, you go with
it. So you can actually maybe get some ideas off of that. So, if 5-3-1 allows you to work in the range of MEV to MRV, then you're already set up quite well for something like a mini cut. Would I prefer and recommend you doing heavy repetitions, such as is the case when it comes to powerlifting programming or something like 5-3-1? I would not advise to do so, and especially when it's a mini cut. Maybe do a little bit of a modification to the entire program so that it's a little bit higher in the repetition ranges, so that you're not in those lower repetition ranges, which first and foremost gives you the ability to not work in those lower rep ranges, which are not as how should I put it? Stimulus to fatigue ratio. So The stimulus to fatigue ratio is a little bit more on the fatigue ratio event instead of the stimulus compartment. So the thing is that the injury risk increases along with that as well. So what I would then recommend you doing is take that program that you're running, do a little bit of higher repetition ranges on those, and then you should be actually quite well set up just for one mesocycle of a minicut, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I think you said what I was thinking, and all I'm thinking now is that you could do Matt Ogus's 753, which is probably more appropriate.
Yeah,
but I agree.
I would just recommend not doing like heavy singles or so, because the minicut is not the right place, or a cutting scenario is not the right place to just follow a strict powerlifting style of training.
No.
There are so many downsides to it, and yeah.
Was it boring but big? Had like 10s in it, didn't it? You could do like boring but big, but don't do any of the 5-3-1.
Yeah. So I've done it in the past that I've been cutting, and not 5-3-1, but what I was saying, a powerlifting style of program while cutting, and it went never well. So when you are a powerlifter, I would always then cut in somewhat a high voluminous block, right? Far away from competition and not in the preparation of a competition, for example, because that's what I've done a couple of times and it never turned out well. Never turned out well. And most of the time, even with an injury.
Damn. Yeah. And I mean, for my first contest prep, I was doing like triples and things, and that certainly towards the end was just getting so unproductive. And like you rightly said, it's essentially a stimulus to fatigue ratio kind of cost to benefit that just doesn't make sense. You're not getting that much stimulus for a lot of fatigue. It's driving down your training volume, and volume is important to be able to sustain and maintain your muscle mass. So that's why it doesn't make much sense. And then your performance, if you are trying to peak for a meet, you don't want to be in a deficit for that. That's not going to help. So anyway, that's a tangent in itself. We've probably got time for, well, maybe more than one. So I will go with Ryan G. Kennesaw, Georgia. I don't know.
Kensaw? I don't know. Kensaw. I think I would say Kensaw.
If I was doing it in my very British way of reading that, it would be Kennesaw. I don't think it is that. So, how would you structure week-to-week RAR in a bulky mesocycle versus a cutting mesocycle? In major compound movements especially. I apologize if this has already been addressed, but I only found your podcast through a friend 2 months ago. Amazing, your friend is great. I've only ever gone through training cycles using percentage RPM, and I'd like to start structuring my own training using RAR. I just don't know where to start. Also, love the podcast, entertaining and informative. Awesome, Ryan G.
So, Steve, this one is something that you can answer
Super
from
simple.
The get-go.
The same. Should we go to the next question?
Yeah.
So essentially, start your mesocycle with 3 to 4 reps in reserve, and then as you accumulate and you progress through the weeks, your RAR will fall probably by 1 each week. So 3 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 2 to 1 to 1 to 0, or however many weeks you're accumulating for. You might repeat RAR if you can extend that, but that's essentially how you'd go for both cutting and bulking, because both of them require hypertrophic training, which is where that kind of idea comes from. So, next question. Mark Reed. Hi guys, I love the show and take advice from it. I don't actually have a question for you, just a comment. If you are going to discuss weed and weed laws, you really should do your research. The information you have in the vaping weed episode in regards to laws and sleep studies, you both showed you have not studied or looked into it at all. Stick to what you know. The title of the podcast was Vaping Weed, and it was clickbait and very disappointing. Loved the show. Oh, that felt like a bit of a kick in the balls and then a kiss on the cheek.
No, it didn't. Because, I mean, the thing is, when it comes to researching before an episode, we never do that because we want to keep it as real as possible. It's always... So I was recently on a podcast invited there, and I don't want to receive the questions beforehand because I want to be prepared, not prepared for a show. When I've been asked a question, I don't want to come across like a smartass and saying like, oh yeah, this study, citing, or I then cite the entire study, like all the numbers in my head. Hardly anyone is able to pull that off, right? Unless you have really just done your research in that area like years on end or so, right? And if you're then preparing for a podcast, we never read through the questions. right? The questions are just like
reading that, like, oh, this isn't what I expected.
I mean, and that is, I think, what is much more valuable for the people, instead of us just like reading basically stuff from the internet and repeating that then here on the show. It's invaluable because that's what you can do yourself, right? And when it comes to the laws and situation, how should I know the law situation in California, for example? This is on the other side of the world. No idea how that one is. When it comes to the scientific literature, we have someone on our team like Miguel Blacut, who did an extensive article about the scientific literature on that at the moment. And this is what we cited there as well. And we didn't say anything else about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't necessarily clickbait because we did answer the question. We just answered it to our best abilities, and we're always forthcoming in our limitations with any question. So apologies that you felt misled there, but we don't, like Pascal said, kind of this is how we roll, essentially. So apologies if that disappoints you somewhat.
I mean, have we ever really used like clickbait titles such because this is what we are intentionally avoiding. We could make every single episode really clickbaity, like, and probably get even more views due to that, because that's just how YouTube seems to be working. Like,
and I don't know, put like boobs on the.
I can't even think of a clickbaity title. Like, I've done it, and then with a thumbnail like this, ooh, right, something like that. And this is not who we are, and we could probably do that. But I mean, that's like vaping weed. This was basically like a question that was covered, and I don't think that it was clickbaity at all. But I mean,
I didn't even know it was something that would be worth. Like, I wouldn't click on it if I saw it. So I didn't think it was clickbait. So we've probably got time for one more question. Let's leave on a
let's go. Yeah, that's number 200.
Emily from Seattle. What is the best type of cardio if I'm cutting and trying to lose fat? Some days I'm doing circuit training with body weight and very light weights, for example, box jumps, burpees. I usually do a 15 to 20 minute cardio session afterwards, low to medium intensity. Other days I do traditional weight training, for example, barbell squats, blah, blah, blah. I usually do 20 to 30 minute cardio sessions afterwards, medium intensity. Other days I don't do any weights, just cardio. I previously was doing HIIT, but heard that longer sessions of slow, steady state are the best. Do you have any recommendations on how to optimize my cardio, number of sessions, length, session, intensity level, how to pair weight, workout days, etc.? I know this is a broad topic, and if you've already covered it in another podcast, please just mention it and I'll check it out. Either way, after the Arkansas incident, I said that right. If Steve can please try to pronounce the following US location, that would be fantastic. Fucking hell. Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
Oh, geez. I mean, I can say California and La, but I'm not that word's going to throw me. Jolla? How are you going to say it?
La Yola.
Yola.
La Yola.
Yeah,
I would say, I could be completely wrong though as well.
It's definitely not La Jolla.
And what did you say to the other one?
Arkansas. Is that wrong?
Yeah. That was the one that you actually brought up the last time as well. It's Arkansas.
Arkansas. Oh, fuck. What is Arkansas? Jesus Christ. Oh, I apologize, Emily.
It's so amazing
again.
Because you said like, right. This time I said it right.
This is just my brain's not wired to work in other people's way of speaking. It's terrible. Amazing. I say cashew nuts. That's wrong, right?
Cashew.
Yeah, I said my parents brought me up to say cashew nuts. Why did they do this to me?
Come on. I mean, thing is though, there are so many things that. So I'm not a grammar Nazi, and I can't be because I'm the worst at German, like the worst. Sometimes the worst. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I even think that my English is on par with my German because it's so bad.
Your English is all right, like it's actually very good.
Yeah, and I mean, for being a mother's tongue on German, it's just like imagining my English on par with my German. Then you can't imagine how bad my German must be.
Oh, damn it. Oh, I'm so sorry, Emily. I've completely ruined. Maybe we can answer a question.
Yeah. So, do you want to go ahead or?
Right. So, the question I found myself asking was, what's the goal? Is it to get better at cardio? Is it to get physique results? Is it for sport specific? I was finding myself reading it and not knowing what the goal was, because that for 100% changes my answer. Because if it's physique orientated, I see no real benefit of doing anything outside of LISS, to be honest, just because everything else has a high interference effect. Medium intensity and anything higher than that, unfortunately, is very similar to weight training, and you could be doing yourself a disservice in terms of recovery, and therefore you won't be able to put into weights. You won't grow as much muscle or lose as much fat versus muscle, so that might be a risk. So if it's for physique, I would certainly, like she said there, like prioritize LISS instead of HIIT. If it is LISS, just do it when you can. I wouldn't overthink it, to be quite honest. It should be low intensity, steady state, so it's not going to really hurt you. I would avoid doing a bunch of it pre-legs, but if you want to do it like post-legs or like on a rest day or away from weight training, that's great. I would just avoid doing a lot before a weight training session. But if it's something else related, like that's not physique orientated, then that's probably out of my expertise, to be honest. I probably can't comment and give a good answer.
Yeah. No, same goes for me. It always depends on what you want to achieve with that. And depending on that, it will then dictate what cardio is then appropriate to do. Other than that, because we are kind of a physique podcast, or more so oriented in physique sports, I would then say, like, this is the way to go, unless you have, like, I don't know, aspirations of building your cardiovascular ability. But this, again, I mean, we brought up a scenario like last week, I think it was, or was it something that we only discussed offline,
Maybe
Steve?
Offline.
Okay, so that's something like... Okay, I keep it as a secret. I'm not going to tell it now. So if people are curious, they can put it in the comment section, and maybe we are going to share the secrets. Never. No, next week. No, but other than that, funny enough, I have a client also from the area of Seattle. So she's not called Emily, but maybe it's just like an
secret persona.
Yeah. So, and she's into biking and is doing a biking competition as well. And for her, I basically said, I wanted to take care of that training or portion or aspect of the training yourself, and just report to me how you feel, right, how that impacts your recovery capabilities in the training or in the gym, because that is totally outside of my scope of practice. And I have no idea. I could tell you something, but that's just like arbitrary and random recommendations. It doesn't lead anywhere, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is probably if you really want to do medium or high intensity, because I have clients who really like doing that sort of thing, I would probably do it after your leg training. Whilst you won't get much out of that HIIT in like the same way, because you won't be able to put in as much, at least you're doing it in a way that you can recover your legs as long as possible, and it won't be as big an impact. So that's where I'd schedule it. But I think we can call it there, can't we? Do we have anything to plug? I mean, 200 episodes, 200 questions now. Woo. Only 25 more to go. Yes, we are really catching up here. When was this?
Still 2 months ago.
Oh dear.
3, close to 3. So we're not really catching up, but we are getting there. We are getting there. We are getting there.
So if you do want to enter a question, actually, we're going to put out a newsletter soon for asking for questions. So you can join our newsletter, probably a link below. There probably is every week, hopefully. I don't know. Pascal might know. Is there a link there to join our newsletter?
I think so. I think it's in our pre-settings for the links and stuff like that.
Excellent. And Ryan does a great job. He emails out normally like once a week on average, probably, just with some great general information.
Cooking tips.
Very good at that. Cooking tips. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. As always, appreciate any sharing of this. Do screenshot it, share on Instagram, do like it, comment.
Especially this time, screenshot it and post it over, because I mean, Steve shows some skin. British guy,
show the titties.
Yeah, approved guy does some kind of soft porn already. I mean, for For the British levels, that is already quite a lot.
Although it's kind of on point, but there's a little bit of green grass near the gym, and there was just this old guy.
What comes now?
There was just this old guy in just shorts, lying down as if he was like dead, and you could see right up his fucking shorts. His ball was hanging out. It's just like this. He just doesn't give a shit. It's just like, it's hot. We're in the UK. I'm getting it all out.
So we had it once when I was still playing in the band, and we were driving through Berlin, and then we had to stop at some red lights, and then there was this guy crossing the street, and I kid you not, he lost his pants. His pants just fell down with his underwear.
Oh God.
And then he needed to, of course, bend forward and pick them up again, and he was totally drunk. He was completely wasted, right? And then he walked, and then it fell down again, and he had to bend over to pick them up again. It was hilarious, and we were just sitting in the car. Of course, you don't expect that to happen when you stop at a red light, and there's someone crossing the street. You don't expect him to lose his pants in conjunction with his underwear, and you can just see everything.
Why does the underwear fall down? That's what I'm getting.
I have no idea. No idea.
And on that note, we'll see you soon, guys.
Cheers, guys.